I've got another piece of leather out of my scrap bin that I've wet down because I want to really talk and show you some of my favorite leather tooling stamping pattern, and that is the meander or serpentine border patterns. I use them a lot on stuff for myself. Here's a knife sheath that has it on it. It's this. This is the meander pattern with an hourglass type meander. And I'll show how I lay out the corners, which is kind of the important part of the pattern, but then everything else is pretty easy. We'll start by laying out the lines where we're going to cut with the swivel knife. That'll be on either side of this. And getting those the right distance apart is important as well. But then we'll do our corners first and work in from that. The other version of this is this one, the serpentine type meander pattern. So instead of cutting back in on itself, it's just side to side. And I'll show you that one as well. Now there's a lot of variations in this pattern. I've got some of the basic ones here. There's a ton of different serpentine patterns. It might be one of the older patterns used in leatherwork. Our first step, I'm going to lay down a line with the wing divider on my wet piece of leather. And this one, it doesn't matter where it is. You can make it further in if you're going to be stitching the piece. You can make it real close to the edge if you're not. Whatever happens to work for the piece you're working on. It's just marking the outer edge of that border. And we'll do the hourglass shape tool first. Basically how I usually lay this out is I'll take the tool and I'll make a real light impression with it. And then I'll get it next to that impression and line up where the top of that tool is about with the middle of this one. And again, I'll make a real light impression with it. Not even, yeah, the camera can just barely see that, it looks like. So you can see that impression that I made there. But it's not deep enough that it's going to be a permanent part of the project. And I'll set my wing divider, again, to the upper part of that impression. And I'll make another line. I'm really going to go part of the way up on the side this time. And then I'll cut those lines with the swivel knife. And try to stay pretty close to them. If you wander a little bit, it's not the end of the world. But the more precise and straight and accurate everything is, the better your finished product's going to be. Now this leather is still a little wet in the center, but out here it's starting to get to be where it's pretty close to what you want to tool. It's starting to get back to that almost looks like it did when it was dry. Not quite though, color. And that's because I wet this one way down because it's a pretty thick piece of leather. I wanted it to soak in and change those lower layers of leather. But for this tool, it should work. Now we're going to lay out our corners first. And the way you manage corners on this pattern, if you put two of them right at the corners, it doesn't look right. You want to get sort of a heart shape, spade shape to that corner. So you're going to line up, if you kind of make an invisible imaginary line straight out from this corner and through each point on the side of this tool. Now why I say from the point of the corner and line up the 2 points on the tool rather than line up the 2 points on the tool with this line is because if this is not a right corner, if you've got a more acute angle on the corners, you want to line up to that point where the corner is. And we'll make our impressions like that. And we'll do the same thing on the other corner. The outside lines. A little deeper with that one. Okay, and once we've got the corners done, then we work in from the corners on the side. And we'll start going one side of the line to the other. We're going to go on the inside line now. And then the outside line. And then we're going to go back over to this other side because we don't want to work right over to it. And I'm lining these impressions up roughly where the points of the tool are in line with each other. Why I say roughly is you can stretch and move it a little bit to come up with filling in that gap. So where we're at right now, if I did an impression there and there, it's going to be pretty stretched out. So we're actually going to put them together just a touch. And it winds up sort of squished together. You can do the opposite. You can stretch them all out more. But it's a pretty forgiving pattern on that. The other pattern, the serpentine type pattern, we're going to do the exact same thing. Lay it out by making some ghost impressions. And just what's going to look good. It winds up being almost 1.5 times the height of the tool, but not quite. Now, I've got a nice thick piece of leather here, so I'm making nice deep cuts. If this was on like a wallet back or something that was only 4 ounces, I would not cut that deep into it because I don't want to cut through. So you will have to make some variation on that. And this tool, since they're basically flat, you can work on a lot of different thicknesses of leather. Whereas like a basket weave tool, you might not get your full impression until you make a deeper one, and it can sometimes cut through what you're working on. So these tools, very similar way of setting it up. Usually what I do on this, it might change if it's a really acute angle on the corner, but this is close to a right angle, is I line up the tool where the center of it is right along there. So the center of the tool points towards the corner. And then I usually get a nice gap here in the corner. Like that. And pretty much the same as what we did on the other one. Work in from your corners. Look at this side. Alright, we're going to go ahead and split the difference there, put that impression in, and then do these two. Now, of course, you can fill in the inside of this with whatever other texture or stamp you want to do. It does sometimes help to take a point of a modeling tool or a spoon and just make sure that these corners are pushed down neat. That'll make a little bit more finished look to your impressions. That is, if you're not going to go ahead and bevel those lines to make it stand up. But as I said, that's kind of one of my favorite patterns to do. You can see it on a lot of things that I do. Like I said, I've got knife sheath here. My round knife that I use and everything has a meander pattern done on its sheath as well. The knife I carry every day has a meander pattern on it. So it's one of the things, just my go-to sort of pattern that I really like. If you have any other questions about any of the leatherworking tools or techniques, go ahead and put something in the comments below. I might know something about it and be able to make another video. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful or entertaining, please consider hitting that like button. And maybe even subscribe to the channel. If you haven't decided yet, there's always watching another video from this channel, and any one of the above will help this channel grow. And thank you for watching.